Hi, how are you doing? Good? 10 on 10? Yeah, full of energy after this warm-up and after the lunch. Okay, that's perfect. So hello, everyone. My name is Marta Wiśniewska. I'm from Poland. Is it anyone from Poland here? Ooh, nice, cześć. Nice. So, yeah, I am a full-stack developer and a freelancer. And besides, I am a part of a Google Developer Expert program. And there are like different categories for this program, and I am particularly for the web technology and Angular. And today I want to tell you how you can keep core web vitals under control and how to improve the user experience and performance of your web apps. Has anyone heard about core web vitals before? Okay. Has anyone heard about Google? Yeah. Come on, it's a good conference, I'm not sure. Okay, so Core Web Vitals is a universal user-centered set of metrics developed by Google to qualify apps by the quality of user experience. And today I want to tell you which exactly metrics build this set. I will tell you what are normally the reasons of poor results for them, how you can improve it. I will tell you about the tools that you can use to debug and test Core Web Vitals. And last but not least, I will show you more practical projects. It was my personal project in which I tried to focus only to improve the Core Web Vitals score based on the Google recommendations. And before I start, because every time when I speak, I wish I could have an assistant, a person who could remind me about some topics or ask questions, because normally people doesn't have any. And this time I decided to bring one. And to select a proper assistant, I had two main requirements. The first one, that this assistant should to be experienced, and the second, that people should like him and it should be rather familiar for the most of the users. And this is my selection, and I think you know him. Okay, so it's legendary Clippy from the Microsoft. And yeah, maybe you will be really surprised, but there's no AI in this assistant in my presentation. So yeah, just to be sure, because nowadays we have everywhere AI, but no with this assistant. And there is one fun fact about Clippy. So some time ago, Microsoft challenged its users, and they posted this tweet in which they wrote that if this Clippy emoji will receive more than 20,000 of likes, then they will create this emoji in Microsoft 365, and as you can find, they received like more than 9 times more. So for me, it's evidence that okay, people like him. And the second fun fact: this is the transformation of the Clippy from the initial version in Microsoft to the last one. So it's like legendary, transformation from Pikachu to Raichu. Okay, but it looks like you're not talking about Core Web Vitals, need some help. And it's a very good assistant, so let's get it started. So why, in general, you have Core Web Vitals? Because engineers love to model everything and to have under control everything. And one day, Google engineers decided to find a way how to qualify apps by the user experience, by the quality of user experience. And actually, it's quite tricky, because user experience is very relative. Like for one person, the app maybe is nice, for another not. So Google engineers try to find like some universal factors that rather matters for the most of the users, that are, let's say, noticeable by the human senses. And based on these 3 factors, they decided to measure some metrics in the browser. And what is maybe important if we talk about this Core Web Vitals, so these Core Web Vitals are stored in a user experience report of Chrome and then used in Google search ranking system. And also, like most of the tools that are measured by Google are based on these metrics and this, let's say, basic APIs. And the first factor that is the most important, I think, almost for everyone, is the loading time. So if the apps are loading fast, then it means that we like to use them. I think it's normal. The second is interactivity. So it means that how fast the app responds to user interactions. And the last one is visual stability. So how the layout is stable in the app while we use this web app. And then, based on these factors, they decided to measure some metrics in the browser. And for loading time, they decided to measure largest contentful paint. And don't be confused with first contentful paint. So the largest contentful paint is measured when the largest content element is visible in the viewport. So actually, we'll focus on the worst scenario. When we talk about first contentful paint, we talk about the first content element visible in the viewport. And Google engineers did so many tests and so many measurements, because in the future they wanted to have like some values that they were able to use to compare to other web apps. And after this test, they created like 3 zones to tell the developers, let's say the business owners, how this app perform in production. So the good time that you can receive for largest contentful paint is below 2.5 seconds. If you receive between 2.5 and 4 seconds is not bad, but could be improved. And for the scores that are higher than 4 seconds, it's highly recommended to be improved. And for interactivity, there is a big change that happened this year. So at the beginning, Google engineers decided to measure first input delay. That is actually the delay after the first user interaction. For example, after the first click or the first scroll. But with time, they noticed that maybe it's not the best metric to measure, because actually they wanted to have like more general overview how it performs. So this year, there was a change that they started to replace the first input delay with interaction to next paint. And actually, interaction to next paint, yeah, the first thing that it rather focuses on all the interactions and finds the worst scenario, so the longest duration. And also another thing is that interaction to next paint is much longer duration, because the input delay is only the delay between the user input and the device response, but this metric also will measure, let's say, the final time until the user can see the rendered change on the layout. And for visual stability, we of course won't measure any time because it doesn't make sense, but they started to measure like layout shift value that actually represents instability of the layout at a single time point. But then they needed somehow to find a way how to somehow measure for the full time that the user spent on it, and actually they sum up the layout shift and they started to measure cumulative layout shift. And I really like to talk about the percentages in this metric, because I think it's quite easy to somehow imagine how unstable it is. So let's say if we receive less than 10% of instability, but it's not bad, so it's this green zone. If you will receive between 10 and 25%, it's not bad, but could be better, and for the scores higher than 25% is highly recommended to be improved. It looks like you haven't explained a good threshold, need some help. And actually it's a very good question, because please keep in mind that you can receive different values of these measurements in different conditions, in different tools. And actually Google, when measures and stores these values, they are using 75th percentile threshold, what means that they want to ensure that they have the target of most of the users, that is also segmented between different devices and different network conditions and browsers. And now I want to tell you about each of these metrics. I will tell you what are normally the reasons of poor results for them and how you can also improve it. So for the first metric that is related to the loading time, the first issue is slow server response time, because it means if that the server will respond too late, let's say for the request for the resources to load the largest content element, it means that also the loading time of this element will be delayed. And to fix it, first of all, take a look at your server, try to optimize it, try to optimize the, let's say, response time from the backend side and from the server. Another thing is that you can apply caching, so then you will optimize, let's say, the responses from the server, and from the next point, slow resource load time. And this point is really related to the big assets. And there is a lot of potential to improve the loading time only by optimizing images. So please keep in mind that, yeah, the format really matters, that the size of images really matters, and also there's a nice technique called adaptive serving. And actually you can serve different assets based on different network conditions and different devices. So it's also really nice way to, let's say, optimize this point. And besides, we have render blocking JavaScript and CSS. And for this, I would say this point is really connected to the front-end code. And the most important thing is to try to optimize your code. Actually, the less code, the better for you, because then the browser, it will be the shorter time to download and parse the app. And actually, it's not only like the rule to have the clean code, but I think the most important that just your app will be more performant. Also for this point, there is also another nice technique called lazy loading, specifically for the elements that are not critical to load, that are, let's say, connected to the largest content element. And for the client-side rendering, maybe you can try different rendering methods. There's, for example, server-side rendering that is quite often much faster than rendering this, so then also you receive the largest contentful pane. Better means smaller. The second point, related to interactivity. So first of all, the first issue, or the first cause of poor results for interaction to explain are long tasks. So try to break down long-running tasks into smaller asynchronous tasks. And the second point, long execution time of JavaScript. Also, it's related to the amount of JavaScript, amount of your code. So also try to optimize it. And also for this and for the next point that are large JavaScript bundles, it's nice to use techniques like code splitting and lazy loading for the code. So to don't put, let's say, the full bundle at the beginning to ask browser to render it, but just put the parts of the bundle that are necessary in the particular moment. And there are, for example, in different frameworks, there are different methods how to do it, but in general, try to code split your code into smaller parts and deliver it, let's say, more economically. And the last point, large DOMs and complex CSS selectors. And yeah, actually, in the simplest words, is that if the more complex selectors and the bigger DOM, the more rendering work for the browser, also the longer time to respond to the user interactions. And yeah, related to instability, I think always the first thing that Google recommends is to add dimensions to all your assets. Because actually, if browser doesn't know what are the both dimensions of the element, it doesn't know how much space it should reserve for this element. So first of all, I think it's quite easy also to implement your code. So add dimensions, first of all, to images, because I think they're the most common, but also besides there are other elements that actually, if you will add it, they will be much, much better for the stability of your app. And the second thing, dynamically injected content, and also this is involved with animations, so try to optimize it. And yeah, keep in mind that also it can cause some layout shifts. And the last point related to fonts. So actually, if you're talking about fonts and the layout shifts, then please keep in mind that there's two the most, I think, common effects related to the fonts and to the custom fonts, typically. Because actually, there are different methods how the browser can render the font, the custom fonts, and it really depends on the browser. So one way is just to wait until it will receive the source, let's say, of the custom font. The second thing is how can do that it will display in a system font and then will swap, so it's like another technique. And this swapping is called, this flash of unstyled text, that actually for a moment the user will see a text with different styles, and also if this, for example, the system font has different dimensions that the custom font that you want to use, then also let's say the height of the elements can be different, and it will also cause the layout shifting. And actually, there is a CSS property that allows you to set by the developer the value and let's say, the strategy which you should use. And actually, the first option is the most convenient if we talk about the layout shift value. Because actually, font display set to optional will allow to swap between system fonts and the custom fonts, but also there's additional thing that it gives a very short period of time for this swap. So if the font won't be loaded because maybe it's, I don't know, it's mobile, it's very bad network connections, then we still stay with system font. but actually there won't be this swapping, and actually the layout shift value will be minimized. And another thing related to fonts, because actually I think it's also very important to mention that it's nice to preload the fonts, at least the one that is the most common that you mostly use in your app. So it's quite simple. You can add this link tag to your heads and then preload it, so it means that the browser will receive the source of the font as soon as possible, and also will be able to render content with this particular font very, very fast. Now let's switch to the tools that allows you to measure and debug these core web vitals. So in general, in Google, there are like two categories of these tools. Ones are tools in the lab that actually are tools like Lighthouse. So they will measure these metrics in simulated environment. And another kind of tools that are tools in the field that are used in the Google search ranking system. What means that in these tools, it worked on the aggregated real users' data. And actually, I think the biggest limit between the tools in the lab and tools in the field is that for the tools in the lab, tools in the field, you need to have some traffic. So the app needs to be on production, and also it has some traffic because even if it's published, it doesn't have yet the enough data to do this. But for tools in the lab, I think it's rather nice to do in development mode for developers, just to compare how the implementation impacts these core web vitals. And yeah, for tools in the lab, we have Chrome DevTools. I will show you in the next video how you can do it in the performance tab, but also the Lighthouse, web page test, and different browser extensions. And for tools in the field, I think the easiest to use, page speed insights. I will show you also in the next slide how it looks like, but also we have Search Console. This is this Chrome user experience dashboard, also browser extensions. And the last point, I think, nice for developers, all the real user monitoring tools, because actually there are open APIs that allows you to measure these metrics, and actually everyone is able to build it. And I will show you later how you can do it. And yeah, there is a question, tools in the lab and tools in the field. If you can think for a moment, maybe you know that the answer is very common in IT world, right? That really depends. Yeah, I also told you a bit about this before. So that depends. If you have traffic, if you want to have really accurate data and to see how your app perform on production, then for sure tools in the field. But if you're a developer, you want to check how the implementation impacts these values, and then I will recommend tools in the lab. And yeah, tools in the lab are nice to find the direction to improve web apps and to improve the quality, let's say, of your app and the quality of user experience. This is how in Chrome DevTools you can find. So if you open the inspect mode, there is performance tab. If you click the checkbox web vitals, then you will start profiling the particular app. There are small dots one is green and two are green, one is red. And actually that are the values of these metrics. And keep in mind that sometimes maybe you cannot see this checkbox, so then try to configure a bit your browser, and also you can have different browser versions, so also sometimes you cannot see this. So yeah, if you really want to use this tool, it's actually quite simple, then you need to adjust a bit your browser. And now there's nice things for developers, how you can actually really control the core web vitals. So there's a nice integration that you can actually do by yourself. So you can integrate the Lighthouse budget JSON file with GitHub Actions, and actually runs some tests that will check the values of these core web vitals. So with each, for example, pull request, you can check if your requirements for particular metrics are done. So this is how it will work, for example, later on GitHub. And this budget JSON file is like this. So if you have ever used Lighthouse, I think it's quite simple. So you can specify the metrics that you want to measure and give some budget for them. So actually, if the budget will be is lower than the value, the real value, then of course the test will fail, and then you will see that, for example, you can also automate that you're not able to merge this request, and as usually the automatic tests works. So I think also it's a nice idea how you can control this as a developer. And yeah, this is a browser extension that actually is nice because this is a tool of both categories. Tools in the lab and tools in the field. Because actually if this has like a real data from users, then it will display the data from these users. If not, then it will display in simulated environment. And it's quite simple because it gives you this metrics and also, let's say, the color, so you know if it's fine or not. And this is as I told you before, I think the easiest way to check in the field, so on the real data, how your app perform. And actually, yeah, this is open for everyone, so everyone can check. And yeah, the limit, yeah, of course, if you have the access to the app to use this web app, then you can also enter web page URL, paste there, and start to analyze. And yeah, the biggest limit for this tool is that it only will show you the results from the last 28 days. So it's not the full, let's say, period when the app was on production. And yeah, it gives you the most important metrics plus additional metrics that are important because of the performance. So I think also it's nice to check. And you can select the different view from different data or from mobile, from desktop. Now I will tell you how you can build by yourself this kind of tool. So, of course, in the front-end world, we have these node packages that actually you can install, and they're like ready methods that will return you the value for these metrics. And you can measure the most important metrics plus additional things that are also correlated to the web performance. And basic usage is like this. So yeah, we install, and we have just ready methods, and below you can see the output, so actually the model of these metrics. And yeah, you can see that there is name, value, data value, but also it's nice to know that the entries, you can find which exactly entries are causing, let's say, the measurements for this metric. So also it can allow you to somehow debug which maybe the pain, let's say, the pain in your app that are causing this kind of measurements and this kind of issues. But actually, it's not very practical, right? Because we don't need to console log these values. The more practical case is that we want to store somewhere and then analyze. So the first way how you can do is just to store it in the database. So we create backend, we send this data backend, and then to store in the database. But another way, if you, for example, a front-end developer, you don't want to play with backend, then you can use Google Analytics tools and store this data as a Google event. So actually it will work like this, and as a value, we will store the measurements from this ready function, and also we can map to somehow to have, let's say, the best formatted value for this event. And then if you will push these events, then you're able to track this in a Google Analytics dashboard. It's like as usual a Google event. Okay, so now I want to show you something more practical. So I had an app that I built in the past, and I wanted just to focus on the improving core web vitals, first of all, to improve the quality of the user experience and in general quality of my app. And I wanted to see how these recommendations from Google, how it will work, what I will achieve, and if it works at all for my app. And first of all, I will show you the app. It was quite simple. A business model was that I want to sell something in a shop, but actually I want to have more traffic, so I also have another tab with blog posts. And actually, I wanted to check the worst scenario, so there was like more than 5,000 of elements to see how it will work to be able really to track the performance. And yeah, the user could add photos and posts. I could interact a bit with this app, but it wasn't like very complex. And also, I added, there were posts, but there were not any images, only text. And there were also a lot of elements. Also, I implemented before the infinite scroll. So with text, it was performing quite well. And the last tab, it was more like funny tab for users. So you had a carousel with thumbnails. And when you click a particular thumbnail, you were able to play the YouTube video. Yeah, so actually, this was the app. And at the beginning, I was wondering how to really start to debug this thing. And yeah, one funny thing it was that I created this app in the past, like I think, I don't know, a couple of years before. And my first reaction when I saw the code was, who wrote this code? And I did amend, git amend, and I checked that it was me. So if you had ever the situation that you think, and then you immediately change your mind that, oh, maybe it's not so bad, some improvements. So yeah, I did it. And yeah, I wanted to just see how this Google tips, if it really works. And then, first of all, I tried to use the easiest tool, I would say, and of course, it wasn't on production. So I was able only to use tools in the field, tools in the lab. And then I wanted to focus on the weakness point that was like measured, let's say, by Google, by the Google ways of, and Google's APIs. And I found that, okay, like it seems that the biggest issue is with cumulative layout shift. So I decided to take a look at the recommendations, and always the first recommendation is to optimize, to add all dimensions to your files. And before maybe, because I really like this explanation of the cumulative layout shift, what is exactly. So actually on the right, maybe on the left. On the left side, you have the scenario with layout shifting. So let's say that user wants to click something, a particular element on the viewport, but actually there's a banner that wasn't loaded yet. And then user clicks this, but actually then banner is loading, and then when he clicks, then he calls an action that will do something related to this banner, like for example, the moving to navigate to another page, or doing like any actions. And actually it wasn't predictable, so user didn't know that it happened. They were like assigned some events that actually did something that user didn't want. So actually the layout shift was 44%. And actually it's really also important to think like how big is this element. And for this case, for mobile, you can see that the banner was quite big. So actually it caused like quite big layout shift. And on the right side, there is a perfect scenario. So actually the banner wasn't loaded yet, but still I reserved space for this banner. So I assigned the dimensions, so my browser knew that how to render this element, and then actually I clicked something, but I did the proper action for this. So the cumulative layout shift was 0. And yeah, the first things that I found, the issue, and also it's always that Google recommends, it was that I added dimensions for all the assets. First of all, images, because there were a lot of images in this app. And also for iframes, because there are like one iframe or a couple of iframes, I don't remember, but yeah. And I also checked this and also improved this. And actually, if you're not able, and yeah, this is my first tip and first learning, so always add dimensions for images, but also videos and iframes. And now, if you don't know, for example, the both dimensions, then you can use this aspect ratio CSS property that is actually shows you the proportion of one and the second dimension. So then you can you're able only to know the first dimension, the second will be calculated automatically. So also it will be then quite easy for the browser to render and to reserve space for this element. The properties seem to be new. How is the browser support? And actually, it's a good question. So let's take a look at the browser support. So I would say it's perfect. There is Internet Explorer, but we shouldn't care too much anymore. So finally, but yeah, in the most of the modern web browsers, you can use it even for some Mobile browser, there's no issues. The gray ones means that there's no enough data to say if it works or not. So actually, the browser support is very nice. So yeah, let's use it. And the second thing that I did, it wasn't an issue, but a way to really, really improve the largest contentful paint and also the core vitals, it was lazy loading. So because I had so many images, so I decided to lazy load the images that I didn't need, let's say, that weren't critical to load and render my app. And there is actually a super easy way to do it, and there is a loading property. It's a native way how you can set the lazy loading just by adding this property and setting to lazy. And let's check a browser support, because maybe Clippy will also mention this. So the browser support is also really, really nice. And I am really surprised because I remember that a few years ago I had to implement by my own this kind of lazy loading, and right now most of the browsers support this. So yeah, I am super glad that actually also the browsers team are working on this also to improve developer experience, and actually we're able to use these features. And if you have, like, for example, a browser that doesn't support this feature, actually if you will implement it, you won't break the app. So for the most of the browser, it will work and it will improve the performance. But for the others, not. It will work like not super slow, but come on, like what is the, let's say, the percentage of the user that will Opera Mini? Let's think, okay. So I did lazy loading, and it was my next learning and next tip for you. So lazy load images, but also iframes. And next, I tried to focus on the last tab, that was the player. And yeah, actually there I found like quite critical issue related to the performance. So maybe you noticed that actually the carousel like wasn't rendering very smoothly. It was quite slow. And then I found that actually these thumbnails that were added to the carousel were added as iframes, but actually it really didn't make sense. Because it was, the thumbnail only to tell which video should be played in the player. So I decided to replace these iframes with just light images. So next tip in my learning, it was use light thumbnails and also placeholders for HTML elements to have the lightest as possible elements to render by the browser. And now I want to show you a tip how you can download like any, let's say, the picture of a node in the browser in the developer tool. So if you will go to the inspect mode, you will click the right mouse button on any node in this view, and you will click capture node screenshot. Then you can download this, and yeah, the default is a PNG image. So actually, it was the PNG like this. So I did it for each of these iframes. But actually, the problem with this was that, okay, it was PNG, but actually it's not the best format for the performance. So I decided to format this image to WebP. And actually, let's check the browser support. So WebP also is very well supported by the other browsers, so let's use it. And actually, because I only had I think 6 images to convert, so I used this free converter. But actually, if you have, for example, your app and you have a bunch of images that you want to convert automatically, there is a nice Node.js tool that actually you can use and convert this from your console to write a script and to convert multiple images at once. Okay, so actually, yeah, I replace these iframes with images, and if I refreshed, even visually you can see the change, that it was loaded really, really fast. And then, yeah, I will show you that it was replaced. Also, I applied the same tips, so I added dimensions, I lazy loaded images, and actually, yeah, this was the final results. And for me, the most important was that, yeah, even like without measurements, one more time, I was able to see that it was much, much faster and much, much more user-friendly. So next tip in my learning, so compress and optimize images. Now I want to focus on the last thing that I did in this tab of the player. So I noticed that before I clicked at thumbnails, I selected the thumbnail, a video to play. There was this shift that these thumbnails were moving down, the cursor was moving down. And actually, it can also cause the layout shifts. So I decided to create a placeholder for this video player. So I just added an image like this one. So with the same dimensions, so I reserved the space with different elements, but with the same dimensions. And also, of course, I wanted to try it as light as possible for the browser to really improve the performance. And then you can find that it worked the same, had the same functionality, but it was just faster, and I think also it looked nicer for the user. So next tip, next learning, reserve space for HTML elements by adding placeholders, and try to make them small. And next week's related to fonts. So what I did, I minimized the fonts. I only left one custom font. I preloaded this font, and also I think it's very important because of the web performance. And I set, as before, the CSS property font display to optional, and also it improved the cumulative layout shift. Next tip and next learning about the fonts. Try to optimize them and preload to deliver the font to the browser as soon as possible. And in the end, I did the one more time measurements. I wanted to have the same conditions, and you can see that I improved. But actually, for me, I think the most important was that you can take a screenshot, is everything on the one slide, that I could see as a user that I really improved a lot. So I would say that, okay, use these values, but please remember that are still values, and the most important is to know how to fix the issues and how the implementation way can impact the full score and the general, I'd say, feeling of the app. So it's the last slide. So the first thing, you know the learnings and the issues, so try to apply them during the implementation. I think is the easiest way just to prevent and repair. Remember that you can receive different score in different tools, because there are different, let's say, conditions for them. And also that these APIs are still changing, because other developers are working on them. So sometimes maybe for the same app you will receive worse score in the future. So also don't care too much about the values, but more about how your app is performing and how is the overall user experience. And thank you so much. Also, Clippy is saying thank you. And if you, and there were like nice slides with useful links, maybe it will be nice to know. Okay, so I will share on the, also I will share on the Slack channel. And there are slides, but actually the most resources that I took to this presentation you can find there on web.dev page. Nice code labs if you want to practice a bit more, more practically how it works and so on. You can find also free code labs also published by Google. There are also different categories, but actually, for this category you can find by this way. And thank you so much for your attention, and enjoy your staying here and enjoy the conference. And I hope you learn at least one new thing. So thank you so much.